I was 16 when the folly of youth and the lure of April Fools conspired to cast a permanent shadow over my life. Our small town was steeped in superstition, a place where legends and ghost stories weren't just tales to scare children, but were woven into the very fabric of our existence. I stopped believing in ghosts right around the time I stopped believing in Santa Claus. Now I have never seen Santa with my own eyes to say that the big man in red, sitting on a sled drawn by reindeers, is real. But ghosts, I can vouch with my own eyes that they walk among us, forever lost. You can only pray that you do not ever cross paths with them or disturb them. Among the many tales of the departed that we had heard as kids, one less talked about was the tale of old Martha, the town hermit, rumored to have dabbled in witchcraft. She lived in a decrepit house at the edge of the woods, a place we'd been taught to avoid since we were kids. But adolescence brings a certain type of arrogance, a disbelief in the old ways, a hunger for adventure that often blinds better judgment. It was my idea. I thought it would be hilarious to prank her with a monster attack, to tap into the very superstitions we mocked yet were subconsciously ruled by. My friends, caught up in the spirit of April Fools, eagerly agreed. We spent a week planning, crafting the most realistic costume from bits of fur and masks we could find. All to scare an old woman who, in our minds, was nothing more than a relic of a bygone era. The night was perfect. A sliver of moon barely lighting the sky, casting long shadows that played into our prank. We approached old Martha's house, hearts racing with excitement and a touch of fear, not of the supernatural, but of being caught. I was the monster, cloaked in shadows, moving with exaggerated beast-like motions. My friends banged on her windows and doors, calling out warnings of a creature come to claim her soul. The door cracked open, and there she stood, old Martha, her eyes wide, not with fear, but with a sorrow so deep it momentarily halted our jest. Before we could retreat, before we could reveal the prank, she spoke, her voice a whisper that cut through the night. I know every soul. You shall know the truth. It is of horror. And as soon as she said those words, her knees gave in and she collapsed before us, falling flat on her face, dead. Her heart couldn't bear the cruel joke we played. Panic set in. We pulled her inside her own dark and dingy house that stank of rotten meat and gathered dust. My friends helped me place her body on a small bed, but as we were doing that, we heard an animal's growl from outside. We weren't brave enough to stop to investigate and fled back to the safety of our families, convincing ourselves it was a terrible accident, that our prank was not the cause. But as the days turned to weeks and the weeks turned to months, the weight of old Martha's curse began to manifest. Strange occurrences began to plague each of us. Shadows lingered a moment too long, laughter echoed with no source, dreams turned to nightmares from which we woke up screaming, and somehow all of us always saw a dark wolf in our nightmares. We tried to convince ourselves it was just guilt, but the truth of our situation was far more sinister. It was only when the manifestations became too personal, too terrifying to deny, that we acknowledged the reality of the curse we had scoffed at. As April Fool's Day approached once again, the dread within us grew. We knew with a certainty that chilled our bones that the culmination of old Martha's curse was upon us. We attempted to apologize, to make amends by visiting her grave, offering flowers and pleading for forgiveness. but the grave was cold, the silence around it an ominous portent of our failed attempts at redemption. The final night before the curse was to take full effect. We gathered together, seeking solace and numbers, hoping there was strength enough among us to withstand whatever horror awaited. But nothing could have prepared us for the truth of horror, old Martha promised. A truth that would unravel the very fabric of our reality. As the clock struck midnight, ushering in April Fool's Day, the air around us thickened, charged with an unseen energy that made our skin crawl. We sat in silence, our bravado replaced by a palpable fear that clung to each breath. The house, once filled with the laughter and carelessness of youth, now seemed a prison, each creak and whisper a harbinger of the doom old Martha had foretold. Then it began. The first sign was subtle, a flicker of movement in the corner of the eye, easily dismissed as a trick of the light or a product of frayed nerves. But then, the shadows grew bolder, coalescing into forms that were almost human, whispering our names with voices that dripped with malice. We clung to each other, our previous disputes and bravado forgotten, united in our terror. It was in this chaos that the truth of the Curse revealed itself, not through the spectres that tormented us, but through the very fear they inspired. With each manifestation, with every cry and plea for mercy, we were forced to confront the reality of what we had done. "We're sorry, Martha," I had cried, almost shrieked at the top of my voice. My friends did the same, and suddenly everything stopped. The horror wasn't in the shadows or the voices, it was in us, in the guilt and the memories of that night. While Martha's curse didn't summon monsters, it made us face the monsters within ourselves. As dawn broke, the manifestations ceased, but the relief we expected didn't come. Instead, there was an emptiness, a realization that we could never undo the harm that we had caused. We had sought to scare an old woman with tales of monsters, but in the end, we were the monsters, our actions born of cruelty and thoughtlessness. In the weeks that followed, our group fractured, each of us grappling with the curse in our own way. But the curse was not so easily appeased. The true twist, the real horror, came when we realized that old Martha's curse had never been about haunting us with supernatural terrors. It was about living with the knowledge of our actions, of knowing that we could never escape the shadows of that night. I left town, hoping to outrun the memories, but they clung to me, a constant reminder of the curse we invoked. It had almost been 7 years now since that day, the April Fool's Day, which falls in a week, will be the 7th since Martha died. Last night, I got a call from my father that my friend Brad's house caught fire, and he perished. When I tried to get in touch with another friend of mine, Jerry, his sister picked up the call only to deliver the sad news that he died a few days ago when he accidentally slipped and came under a subway. I tried to reach Jordan as well, only to find out that he hung himself a month ago and passed away. Brad, Jerry, and Jordan were my 3 friends who